Good afternoon, everybody. It is a Facebook Live Friday. Brian Milam and the Mafia King Lee Howard here with the unshaven look, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, just two dudes wearing makeup talking sports.
Well, he's wearing makeup. I saved mine for later. But thanks for joining us on this Facebook Live Friday. You've heard of the dog days of summer with baseball. Well, for the media group, this is the dog day. Or these are the dog days because this is one of the slower times of the year. There's no high school, no college, so to speak. But the show must go on.
Yeah, for my money, the two slowest weeks of the entire sports year, sports calendar, is the last week of June and the first week of July.
And guess where we are?
And we're smack dab right in the middle of that. But luckily for us, Kentucky basketball keeps things interesting, and former Wildcats in the NBA. And, of course, there's the FIFA USA women's soccer game going on. So there's a few things going on, but just not much.
Yeah, you know, that we showed yesterday on TV what happened 2 days earlier. The basketball Wildcats of this year's team, this upcoming season, got to hang out at Cal's house, have some great steak, some pool time. Nate Sestina trying to draw charges in the pool, which shows you what kind of gamer he is. He wants to win. He's drawing charges in the pool.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
I just want to be over there and eat the steak, honestly.
Yeah, no kidding.
Forget the pool.
No kidding. But it has been a slower time. This coming week will be a little bit of a slower time also with the 4th of July holiday on its way. But we still have some news and notes, and let's just start with one of the things that didn't happen, and that was Kerry Blackshear not coming to the University of Kentucky. He was the most high-profile grad transfer still out there. People said he was going to Tennessee. I got texts from people in Tennessee saying, yep, he's going to Knoxville, going to Florida, going to Kentucky, going to places in between. He does go to the Florida Gators. And, you know, Cal says, and I think sometimes when you listen to John Calipari, he will say, hey, our roster's fine, we're good.
Right.
And maybe he knows at that point somebody's not going to be coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he saw the writing on the wall even before Blackshear made that announcement. But it became news, of course, because Blackshear is one of the most talented players in the country, certainly the most sought-after grad transfer on the market. And he's also going to another school within your own conference. So when Blackshear goes to the Florida Gators, they automatically become a contender, not only to win the SEC, but also a contender to make a run deep into the tournament, maybe and possibly Final Four. So I think it makes sense for Kerry Blackshear because he can be a featured big man for the Gators. He's also from Orlando, family's right there, so it makes a lot of sense for him to go there. Well,
I think also when we talk about big men at Kentucky, and John Calipari has always said a team without a big guy is a farce. They're a fraud.
Right.
Yeah, and Kentucky has still this year, Nick Richards, everybody keeps waiting on Big Nick to show up and show that he was a McDonald's All-American, deserved that honor. And I think this allows him with Blackshear not coming. Sestina, not a big guy in the paint, more of an outside floater, a three-point shooter, if you will. This gives Nick Richards another opportunity to show he can do something.
It does two things. Nick Richards, first of all, had to be the happiest man that Kerry Blackshear did not commit to Kentucky because it forces him into that role where he has to step up and he has to make something happen. Also, E.J. Montgomery, which I think will take a big step forward. But it also gives Calipari the opportunity to play a little bit more four-guard, one-post type sets. This is a perfect year to do that. They've got some tall guards on the outside. Keon Brooks can play a 4 if he needs to play a 4. Dante Allen, I don't know what his status is, but eventually if he gets back on the court. They've got some guys where they can go 4 guards and possibly EJ or Nick in the post and really give teams some different looks. Those are some tall guards as well.
You know, looking at some of the video that we saw of the guys in the pool and hanging out, just having a good time, Ashton Hagans has been hitting the lead, man. He's been hitting the iron and pumping it up a little bit. And Emmanuel quickly, is he going to bounce back and have a better year? He really caught fire in spots, got cold in spots, like a lot of freshmen do. So it will be interesting to see what kind of guard play the Cats do get this year.
We got to talk about this Kentucky-Indiana series because already on our Facebook live chat, we've got people talking about it and their opinions on whether or not the Kentucky-Indiana rivalry on the basketball court should be renewed. Obviously, this came back to light. This discussion seems to come up at least once a year, but yesterday, Brian, it came up because of John Calipari's comments.
Yeah, and I am, as he knows, as many of you know, I am a traditionalist. I like a lot of the old school methods, but certainly understand you have to adapt to what's going on right now. I love watching UK and Indiana. It was one of the rivalries I grew up on. It was a part of the Big Four Classic. If you remember, those of you who grew up in the 80s watching basketball, you had Louisville, Notre Dame, Kentucky, Indiana. That was a doubleheader of the regular season. Everybody in those two states looked forward to.
Sure.
And I love the fact that it was at the Hoosier Dome back then. I was in attendance when Kentucky lost to Indiana in Assembly Hall. Maybe the best basketball and
at
craziest,
the Christian Watford shot.
That was the Christian Watford shot in December of 2011. Maybe the most rabid, unpredictable atmosphere I have ever been in for college basketball. I love the home-and-home series. Indiana used to come to Rupp. Kentucky would go to Assembly Hall, or they met in Louisville's Freedom Hall. John Calipari loves not going to a place like Assembly Hall. He wants the neutral site. I think they ought to play it. Indiana says no.
Yeah, that's where they are. And John Calipari said yesterday on the SEC Summer Teleconference that basically Kentucky's schedule is pretty well set for the next 5 years as far as, and I think what he meant by that was their big opponents. They're still going to pepper in all the smaller schools. That part of their schedules are certainly not set. But his point was with the Big 12 SEC Challenge, with the CBS Classic, with the State Farm Champions Classic, they're big games for each year. And with the Louisville game, obviously, those big games are already pretty well set on the calendar where they don't have room to add a school like Indiana. Let me get to a couple of comments here, and then I'll give you my opinion on it. Jim McCauley says yes, as far as they should renew that rivalry. Cheryl says maybe when Indiana gets some class. Until then, no. Robbie says should play Duke instead of Indiana. I know there are people in that camp as well. JC says absolutely, it's a rivalry that should never have stopped. Gary says yes about the rivalry. Matt says the last time I watched the UK game was the last UK-IU game. It was one of the best rivalries in college basketball. And he goes on to say we should not have dropped them in football either, in my opinion. Okay, let me give you my opinion.
Go for it.
I would love to play devil's advocate with you just for the sake of playing devil's advocate. And I know there's a lot of people in the fan base of Kentucky that is like, Indiana's not any good. Why would we play Indiana? Because they're terrible. They're not a good team. I would love to play Indiana every year. I'm totally with you. I think that is a rivalry that regardless of how good the teams are, heck, Kentucky has played Louisville on years where Louisville wasn't any good, and it was still a good rivalry. I mean, even if one team's down a little bit. Now, I do agree with Calipari. I'm cool with the neutral site thing. Yeah. I get that. The fan bases, yes, I mean, they'd probably like to have a home and a home, but played at Conseco Field, or what's that, Bankers Life Fieldhouse, played at the Yum Center. But I love it. And here's my family. I have family in southern Indiana, big Hoosiers fans. They grew up on that rivalry, watching Kentucky and Indiana. I think a lot of people who are against it are people that lived in the southern part of the state or a different part of the state. They may have grew up in the Tennessee rivalry, was bigger to them, or the Louisville rivalry. There is a section of the fan base, and certainly a section of the Indiana fan base that would love to see the Cats and the Hoosiers every single year, and I am totally in that in that conversation as well.
I thought growing up in Louisville, and it was a big deal. I mean, because the Louisville TV stations, they cover UK U of L, but they have to cover Indiana. Indiana University is just a little more than an hour and 20 minutes away once you get on that two-lane road, the final 45 minutes to Bloomington. And while Indiana is not what Indiana was in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, it is still, by name, it still grabs your attention. Yes. And Kentucky, what if Kentucky wasn't Kentucky? Would Indiana still want to play Kentucky? You're dang right they would. Yeah. And because the name alone, it gets the traditionalists going. It gets those people who grew up on Kevin Greavy pumping in 35 to beat Indiana in 75, 92-90. People remember those games.
Yes.
And it's also key, I think, to dominate the region of the country you're living in, because Kentucky has controlled Tennessee for the most part. They've controlled Ohio State and Cincinnati, and Indiana, they have beaten them more times than not over the last, when they played over the last 10, 15 times or so. I just think it's important. We put so much emphasis on Duke and North Carolina, Kentucky.
And those games are fun, too.
Yeah, and they're
I would
forced
like
to play
see them
Kansas every year because there's only one team in that conference Kentucky can match up with, and that's Kansas.
And they're going to see some of those other schools we were just mentioning in the CBS Sports Classic, in the State Farm Champions Classic, in those. So what if Indiana's not great right now? In fact, they beat Kentucky since that Watford shot. They beat them out. They knocked them out of the tournament.
Right.
What was that, 2014?
That was in Des Moines.
Yeah.
UK beat them in the regular season.
So I know they weren't what they've been, but okay. So what if what if Kentucky goes and beats the dog out of Indiana?
Yeah.
Well, there's a win, but there's something to be said about those rivalries. So I totally do not agree with the people that say, well, they're not any good, so we shouldn't play them. Does that mean if Louisville's not any good, we shouldn't play them? I mean, that argument does not stand up to me. It's still the two schools, and you should play them because, like you said, you ought to win the region.
Because if Louisville's not any good, UK wants to beat them just because.
Yes.
So why wouldn't you want to beat Indiana just because?
Okay, so Tommy says definitely on the rivalry. I grew up on that rivalry. Mary says Hoosier grad surviving the Big Blue territory. Would love to see this come back. Philip says yes. Deborah says yes. Philip goes on to say should play every year. Totally agree. There's the other argument, but like I said, I'd love to play devil's advocate with you, but I just can't.
And the way it's going right now, it'd be another win for UK. Anyway,
one more win on your schedule.
Quickly, Anthony Davis goes to Los Angeles, and he's going to get number 23. LeBron James is going to give him that number, and maybe that was part of the caveat to get him to maybe the new Showtime Lakers. I don't know. But that's a big deal. Anthony Davis wanted out of New Orleans. He wants a winner. If you're going to be around somebody who has been a winner, why not be around LeBron James, who's gone to, 9 NBA championships over the last decade plus? I think it's a big get for Los Angeles. It's a bigger get for Anthony Davis because he's kind of been hidden in New Orleans a little bit.
And what Anthony did yesterday was he waived his trade bonus, essentially, that was worth $4 million. Now, you got to think he's going to get that some other way, but not through his contract. The Lakers are going to figure out a way to slide him $4 million. But he waived that, and then the Lakers reworked that trade that's originally sent him there and actually traded away 3 more players yesterday to the Washington Wizards. And what that did, all that money, is it opened up room for the Lakers to sign another max player. So that team could get ridiculous. There's also rumors that another Wildcat, Nerlens Noel, who's a free agent, could end up on that roster as well. So that would be fun to see.
A couple of other things. The Summer League, the NBA Summer League, UK has 3 new guys in there. Nick Mayo from EKU is going to play for the Miami Heat. So we've got some local flavor going into the NBA Summer League. That starts on Monday, July 1st. That's one of the saving graces for the media people
this time of year.
Is the
for
NBA
us, at least
Summer League, because you get to see Hero and Washington and Keldon Johnson with the San Antonio Spurs. Thought it was kind of neat that when San Antonio drafted Keldon, and we may have touched on this last week, now John Calipari's had a player on all 30 teams in the NBA. How many NCAA coaches can say that?
I would say none.
Gosh.
I would say only one. I would say one could probably
amazing.
say that. Yeah. So the San Antonio Spurs, the final team in the league that hasn't had a Calipari Kentucky player. That's an amazing stat. Because you also got to think some of those teams have had multiple. It just so happened that San Antonio hadn't had one until Keldon Johnson. So
what else?
Cool.
What else on the menu you think? Anything? It's that time of the year.
Friday, and I didn't even shave today. I'm sure people have noticed. I didn't even, casual Friday, and I'll shave on Monday. That's all I got.
That's all he's got. Also, since the last time we spoke, Isaac Humphries had his benefit concert for the Ronald McDonald House. That looked like a good time. Wasn't able to be there, but saw a video of it. And Isaac Humphries, a guy that will always be a fan favorite with UK basketball fans. What a humble, genuine, honest human being who loves the game of basketball. Who knew when he came to Kentucky he was such a musician? I mean, that was incredible when he sat there, and I talked to him when we went to the UK Pediatric Specialty Clinic. I said, can you read music? How did you know? He goes, no, I don't read any music. I'll sit there and play it now.
That's great. We have one other topic.
Yep.
We don't always take topics, but we will. It's slow. Philip says UK football recruiting looking pretty good.
Well,
and it really is. I mean, he's correct on that.
It is, because last weekend was
four commits in the
huge get for UK football, because, as you know, people automatically look at Kentucky football. Okay, you won 10 games. You won a major bowl game. You beat a heavyweight football name in Penn State. Do it again. Yeah. I didn't see it. Do it again. Yeah. And then if you have to do it again, well, okay, it's 2 in a row. Can you do it a third time? And I have always said, if James Franklin can go to Vanderbilt and win back-to-back 9-win seasons, back-to-back-to-back, right, 9-win seasons, why can't Kentucky? Kentucky, a lot of people are looking at UK saying 6 wins, 5.5 wins, 6.5 at the most. Getting these recruits is going to be huge to proving the doubters wrong again.
I think so. And the biggest news wasn't actually the 4 commits over the weekend. It was actually on Monday, Justin Rogers, the prize recruit out of Michigan, reaffirming his commitment to Kentucky football after taking a visit to Alabama. That tells you something right there as far as where the state of the program is at this point.
Yeah, and we will have the UK Football Media Days coming up the first couple of days of August, so we have another month before we really get to meet a lot of these guys and see what is going to happen for this 2019 UK football team. I think they are better than 6 wins, only because you have to believe in what the coaches are telling you. If Vince Marrow and Mark Stoops and Eddie Grant and all these guys are saying, don't sleep on us, folks. Well, that's what they were saying last year, because people said, Kentucky, you know. I think at some point you have to start believing, if you don't already, believing what the coaches say, because they know something that we don't, just like they did last year.
Absolutely.
All right, that'll do it for this Facebook Live Friday. Thanks for joining us. For Lee K. Howard, I'm Brian Milam. We will see you next Friday at around 3 p.m.